Well, hello, and thank you for tuning in to TruthSetFreeTV.com. I'm Vincent Rhodes, your host, and listen, we have a very good night planned here. Just want to make sure that everybody's online and available to kind of come in. Let me see who's out there. But it's a very good night. It's a good night to be alive. Tonight, what we have is Terry Eicher. And, Terry is the well-known producer of many of the videos that we have been seeing. And they've been remarkable. The one that blew me away was the first one I think I saw was the one about the flat earth. Then there was one about the stars, and that one blew me away when I saw that one about the stars. So I see Sam is here. Sam Gilman, hello, how you doing tonight? Colin Dresser is here, and hopefully other people will come along and come on in to the chat. We have a good show tonight. We have a brief one, but it's a good show tonight. I think it's going to be quite interesting discussion that we have with Brother Terry. Terry, I heard you talk about the Lord and everything. Can you just say hello to everyone out here and tell us a little bit about how you got into the flat Earth? How did that first start?
Hello, Vincent. By the way.
Hey.
Good evening, everyone listening. Now I've been into the Lord ever since I was a child. I'm from the South, actually. I live in the North now, but I'm from the South originally. Lived there for 30-something years. And when I was 18, I went into the Navy, and I was in the Navy for 2 years, and I kind of got myself, I was around what we would call old timers, and they would tell me things that I just kind of thought, well, yeah, I don't, back in those days, you thought, don't pay no attention to them. They're crazy, And they would tell me stories of the earth isn't what that we've been taught in school and all that.
Really?
So I kind of wrote back home. We didn't have cell phones and things back then. So I wrote back home to my brother, and I told him, I was like, hey, I'm not in that department, but there's a branch of the part of the Navy that I'm in, and we supposedly guard this ice wall and all these things. And I had wrote all this stuff in a letter, and the next thing I know, I was court-martialed, and they have a charge. It's called mutiny, and I was charged with mutiny, which is conspiring against your government, is what they call it.
Really?
Yes. And so they locked me up in a place out in San Diego called Brig Miramar. And I was in there about 6 months, and I really had to, they treated me bad. They beat me, and they did a lot of things to me that I'm not going to discuss online. But I had to make a decision one night, and the way the windows were, the moon was coming across the window one night, and these bars that was in this window, the way that the bars looked was kind of like crosses, but a shadow of the bars came across the wall, and it looked like 3 crosses on the wall, the shadow of those bars in that window. And so I had to tell myself, you know what, there's an easy way out of this, or there's a hard way out of it. But the Lord will show the way someday. Right now is not the right time. So I went in after getting court-martialed, and I was like, you know what, I'd been out drinking with all the other fellas, and I wrote my brother, and I don't know what I was talking about. I'd heard some old stories, and I don't know what I'm talking about, so I was just lying to my brother and fibbing, blah, blah, blah. Well, I was, everything was expunged, and I had 2 years to finish out, so they let me finish it out in the Coast Guard. And I noticed in the Coast Guard that even if we got so far out as the U.S. Coast Guard, we would get so far out, and they would, the Navy would turn us around and tell us, that we're in no-fly zone. Or
really?
Uncharted territory. Yes, and I always thought that was very suspicious. So as a historian, even before then, even back in my teenage years, I never really listened to the teachers, and I would lay on the hood of my car when I was 16 years old and I learned to drive, and I'd look up and I'd see the stars, and I was like, it just doesn't feel like I'm spinning around, you
Uh-huh.
know, and just little bitty things, I mean, I think I graduated with an IQ of 162, and not to be bragging, but I was always a little bit more, uh,
Astute.
yeah, to things that other kids just like, oh, okay, well, if that's what the teacher said, let's believe it. And I was always the one to question the teacher. So none of my teachers like me. They're like, well, just believe what the book tells you, you know. So I dug into it. I dug all the way back to, I'm going to say 5,000 years. I went all the way back to the Egyptian times. And believe it or not, before I realized of what I believe now, I'm not going to sit on here and tell everybody else to believe this, but I'm going to tell you what brought me to my beliefs. I went all the way back to the time of the Egyptians, and I learned that there's a small elite group of people that run things, you
Uh-huh.
know. And what I mean by that is, say if you know astronomy really, really well, and you know when the next eclipse is going to happen. Now
Yeah.
today they tell us. Now today they tell us on the news when the next eclipse is going to happen. But
Right. Right.
let's go back 5,000 years ago. Now, if I could read the sky and I already knew the truth of where we lived and how things run, you know, I could go to a small village and say, "You're going to worship me as your king or your
Yeah.
God, or I'm going to bring darkness upon your village
Yeah.
tomorrow at high noon," knowing in my head that it's just going to be an eclipse. Well, these
Right.
people don't have that knowledge, so they wouldn't know that. So tomorrow at high noon, when the sky gets dark, guess what? I become a god or a king.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And I'd always knew that. So I thought, well, we live in a more modern time, so it's you're teaching the masses. You're not teaching a village. You're teaching masses and masses of people to believe the same thing.
Right. Right.
And I just dug into it, and I dug into it, and I dug into it. When I left the Coast Guard, I got into the environmental business, and I was up high, really, really up high in the air a lot. And I worked with a lot of engineers. So an engineer came to me one day, and he says, "Hey Terry," he says, "I know you're really, really smart on the Illuminati and the Freemasons and the conspiracies of the world." He said, "I know your stuff. You've dug into it." He says, "But have you ever checked out flat Earth?" I said, I've run across the flat Earth many, many years ago in my youth, but I haven't really dug into it." And now this guy was very smart. I mean, he was a laboratory engineer. He was a very smart guy. I mean, with chemicals and everything. And he run this place, but he was kind of just like your old regular Joe. So I thought, well, maybe he's a Fruit Loop. So the first thing he asked me, he said, "Go on to Expedia," and I had used Expedia before for my flights that I had taken in the Coast Guard and
Uh-huh.
taken in. So I got to digging into these flights, and I compared those flights on a round Earth, and then I compared those flights on a flat Earth,
Uh-huh.
and yeah, it kind of hit me. My inner wisdom kicked in. I was like, wait a minute, this just doesn't make sense to stop in Saudi Arabia if I'm going from South Africa to Australia
Right.
when I can just fly straight over to Australia.
Right.
So I dug into it, and I dug into it, and when it's kind of like, and I don't know if I should say it this way, but I'm going to say it this way because we're talking to the common folk. When
Uh-huh.
your buddy tells you that your girl is cheating on you, the last thing you want to do is believe him. That's the
Uh-huh.
very last
Right.
thing you want to do because
Yeah.
it's a gut feeling like no other.
Right. And everybody's in love with the globe Earth,
Exactly,
and
exactly,
we feel like we're too smart to be fooled. But go ahead.
exactly.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yep. So, anyways, I got to digging into it, and it all come to me. The best way I can explain it is kind of like a spider web. You have the outer spider web, and then if you follow the spider web in from either side of it all the way around it, you eventually come to the middle.
Uh-huh.
And I tied everything together, and I spent years and years. Now I spent 2 years when I left the environmental business. I had to raise my two kids by myself. So I had about $24,000 built up in unemployment. And I said, you know what? I've busted my butt for the last 15 years. I'm going to relax and just enjoy things with the kids. Well, with telescopes and cameras, everything you could think of, I would, even a certain tree across the street, I would watch the sun set on a branch in that tree, but I'd also watch the moon set on the same branch in the same spot.
Uh-huh.
So I followed this for 2 years, and I wrote everything down, and I timed it, and I read my scriptures. I went back. I actually got back. I'd gotten away from biblical cosmology for a while, but I went back to it once I started studying this.
Yeah.
And yeah, it took me by surprise. I guess most people call it the awakening.
Yeah. Well, I guess people really are going to want to know, where did you get this idea from, though, to look at the stars the way you did? And let me see if I can even pull it up. That's what I'm trying to pull it up so we can take a look at some of the work that you did when it comes down to the just putting those stars out there. The way you did. How did you come up with that idea, though? Did you always know that the stars were making that shift as they do, or was that just something that you've been looking at?
Well, I always knew that we weren't spinning around, and the first thing that I asked myself, I was like, wait a minute. If I'm looking at the same stars that people was looking at 5,000 years ago and built pyramids to the constellation of Orion, and they still line up perfectly, then you don't even really have to be a smart guy. Just
without a doubt. I mean, we've had the same stars since Jesus was here. I mean,
right.
So people are really foolish to even believe in anything opposite. But I don't know. Everybody's brain dead today. Just really, really amazing. Keep on. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So anyways, the stars, I figured the sun and the moon out fairly quickly because I'm one of those guys. I'm a very critical thinker. And once I set my heart on something, whether it's riding a motorcycle or running a big piece of equipment, whatever, I will figure it out and figure out the fastest and easiest way to do it better than whoever done it before.
Uh-huh.
And I've always been that type. But the thing that always puzzled me that I just couldn't figure out was the stars. So I'm sitting out in the yard one summer, and I have a swimming pool, a kiddie swimming pool out there.
Yeah.
Well, I also have a wooden deck up above, which is on the second floor. And that kiddie pool, I looked up. I'm just laying there in my lawn chair, and I look up, and I see this reflection of the swimming pool on the underside of the wooden deck.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's flickering and it's making these waves, and I was like, wait a minute, I've only seen that one other time in my life, and it was through a telescope. When I was looking at planets.
Like a revelation straight from God.
Yeah, it's like it hit me.
Hey, what's up, my friend?
So and then I had to figure out how is it perfectly round, though. And I noticed that the swimming pool was perfectly round, so the reflection was perfectly round. So I went back and I looked in the Bible, and it says that the stars are fixed in the firmament. Now, when I say fixed, I'll just put it to you like this. We're going to say engraved or etched in the glass firmament.
Right.
So if you take a glass bowl and you take an engraver and you engrave a little circle in it, well, that's engraved in there. So whatever movement, and you fill that bowl with water, and then you shine a flashlight through it, I noticed that even though I could see the engraving, I could also see the reflection. So here's what I figured out, and here's why I made the video that I made. Now, the star that you're actually seeing, you're not actually seeing the real star. You're seeing the reflection of the star. And this will explain of why on one side of the earth you see the stars, and the other side it's almost like the opposite, except for the North Star. So when the sun is lighting up one side of the dome, the firmament, well, it's on those stars are already etched into the firmament. So when the sun hits those little, I guess you could say craters, but I call them engravings. They're fixed in the firmament. What you're seeing on the dark side of the earth is the reflection of that star that the sun is shining on. That's the sunlight hitting that engraving that's in that firmament, and it's reflecting it back to the other side of the firmament. And I'd watched an old scientist, and he explained how stars were a reflection, and it was like from the 70s or something. So, and yeah, so that kind of kicked it in more. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that I'm 100% sure on this. This is just my theory.
Just your theory.
Just my theory.
Right, because some people believe that the stars actually have their own light. And, you know, I'm still leaning towards that because, you know, you put the stars in the sky. I don't know. You know, that's an interesting thought, though, about that. But there definitely is some sort of reflection of water being reflected against that whatever's going on with Venus, Mercury. And you know what? The thing is that none of the stars look like in the telescope, a real telescope, the way that the people at NASA and the scientific community have actually portrayed them to be when we look at them, you know.
Well, if anybody that'll do a little research, I mean, anybody that's listening right now, and whether you think this is nonsense or whatever, well, most of you guys use Google. Go on to Google and punch in pictures of Venus from NASA, and I guarantee you, if you look down underneath it, it'll say image. An image is not a picture.
Right.
An image is something that's computer generated.
Yeah.
You know, but what I'm saying on the video that I made, Vincent, is what I showed you was a reflection. Now, when I held the board over the bow at an angle, now the dome angles from each side of the earth. It angles up and it rounds off. So I figured if the sun was hitting one side of the firmament, that it would reflect back to the other. So when the sun hits the bowl of water, which if there's a circle etched in one side of the firmament and the sun hits it and there's water behind it, well, it's going to reflect to the other side, and that's how you see the waves of water in it. So that's why I show you a reflection on that board that is actually being held over the bowl of water.
I just noticed. I just noticed while you're talking about a reflection, I've got two images of myself too, being displayed. let me get rid of one of the images because that's probably confusing the heck out of some of the viewers. But yeah, I got it up right now. Let me run it just a little bit so everybody can kind of like keep up with what we're talking about. I'm gonna run the video and.
Stars and planets reflect through the firmament.
Cool music.
Oh, is that on the video I made?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're watching the video right now.
Okay.
If do you have? Why don't you can turn it on another screen and you can see it.
Now let's have a look at the stars and the planets through a real telescope in comparison to the demonstration I just performed.
That's pretty cool at night.
Oh yeah. Now, in the
And
daytime,
that's fascinating. That's water. That's water. Nothing else acts like that except water.
no, I mean, anybody with any kind of common sense, and you don't have to be an intelligent guy, but anybody with any kind of common sense can tell that's water. And
Yeah.
there's, it's not gas.
It's just like what God told us, though. It gets right back to what God said.
Right. Now we'll get a lot of these hardcore, and we can't call them stupid people because we once believed the same thing. So I really don't believe in saying that they're stupid, but they're just indoctrinated into believing something. It's hard to let go of that belief if you call that.
There's a guy you're telling about a girlfriend that's cheating on him.
Right.
It's hard to believe.
Right.
Same thing.
But yeah, it's. A lot of people believe in having a reputation, and I'm definitely not. I'm a real outstanding, considered an upright, outstanding guy where I'm from. And a lot of people look up to me. So the last thing that I would ever want to do is have somebody think, well, he's a Fruit Loop, he's lost his mind.
Yeah.
So I try to present things, and believe it or not, some of those people that have been those hardcore, indoctrinated people, they've come around. It's taken me quite a few years, and I noticed if you don't push it on them really, really hard, and you let them go do a little research, they'll come back to you. They'll have questions.
Yeah. Well, same with my community too. Same with my people. But you really have to be humble. You have to humble yourself in order to accept something new. That okay, there is something that happened that
the Bible says, the stars are fixed in the firmament. So there you have seen it. Simple proof that the stars are.
Like I was saying though, Vincent, on the with the waterways in the stars and the planets. Now, you got a lot of hardcore globe Earth believers that will say, "Oh, well, your telescope's out of focus."
Yeah.
And that's their excuse. That's the only excuse that they can come up with. That's their last little bite or last little thing that they can grab onto to deny the truth.
I could hear Neil deGrasse or one of them people. Right now this is going across YouTube. So what's going to happen? I'm sure that if somebody picks this up or this goes viral.
Right.
Then immediately you're going to have all this on the news trying to debunk it. And why? I don't understand why. I guess, again, it's the whole thing comes crashing down. It's almost like what you was talking about in the very beginning about protecting the ice wall.
Right.
That if you don't believe what you're doing, then there's a danger to you, physical harm to you,
Right.
It's amazing.
Well, there's evil behind it, but also you got to think what's his name? Tommy Lee Jones says to Will Smith in the movie Men in Black. He says a man is smart, but people are dumb and panicky. Now, if everybody found out at one time, just say the whole world found out tonight where we actually truly live, you'd have a bunch of idiots trying to get on the boat and go find the edge and all this. It'd be a total disaster. Kind of like asteroids and all that stuff are made up. But if you told everybody tonight, well, there's going to be an asteroid to hit the Earth tomorrow. At 3 p.m. You know what everybody would start doing tonight? They'd start robbing and they'd start doing everything because they wouldn't care. It's the end of the world,
Right.
So that's just the way humans are. It's the way they think.
The thing is, though, here's the thing. With this particular information, it should make people more fearful of God and realizing that, wow, we're not in control of anything.
That's exactly right.
And if the point is driven home that we are up under a terrarium where we are in this environment that was set up for us, and someone actually, a divine being has us under glass, and we're on top of some sort of plate.
Right.
and that's the way it looks. You know, we're under a bowl and we're in a terrarium. Then people have to ask the question, who made the terrarium and where did it come from? And you mean to tell me we're not, you know, we just can't really go where we want to go. We have to stay in here. You know, it's kind of like realizing that, like my dog, you know, the dog we have a kennel, which is, you know, at night the dog has to go into it's a large area. It's a large area in the house. But we're just not gonna let you roam around at night, you know what I mean? So, you know, we got too much trash and other stuff, and you'll make a mess. So you got to go in this kennel over here in this area. It's not a cage. It's she walks around freely in the area, but at the same time, we created that to keep the dog in. The same thing about us leaving this earth. If people really believe that we can just do whatever we want to do and just go anywhere, but if they really come to that conclusion that, wait a minute, we live in a totally different world than what the scientists have been telling us, and they are really fooling us. You know, if they come to that conclusion, man, I believe that there's going to be a massive shift in the way people think, you know. You know, the burning and looting, I think we need probably become more respectful. Who knows? You know, I don't know.
Right.
But the Bible says that, you know, even when God sent them strong judgment upon the earth in the book of Revelation, they still did not repent of their fornication. So I don't know. Whoever these people are that are keeping us in the dark have a lot of constituents that love darkness. The Bible says men love darkness, and they probably would join them. Right. You know, just to keep us from believing in God.
You know, Vincent, at one time I was one of those guys. You know, I left the Lord many years ago. When I was in 3rd grade, we had an art thing going on, and I was always really good at drawing and stuff like that. So I drew a picture of the devil. And out of all the people in my classroom, they picked my picture to put in the Capitol Arts Museum in Bowling Green, Kentucky. They picked one picture from each classroom. I drew a picture of the devil.
Wow.
With crayons. With crayons. And I didn't even know what the devil looked like. But I drew him.
Well, you know, something had to put that in your spirit.
Yep.
You know, and the evil one, I've worked with kids for years. I was a school teacher, right? And in the inner city, you know. So I taught school in the inner city, and I would see the demonic presence come on those kids. And a lot of times I would just go over there and lay hands on them and bless them and pray for them. And I didn't pray for them openly and loud, but I did. Because I could see that, you know, when a child is acting up or acting disobedient, there is something suggesting, there's a spirit that is suggesting these things to the child. And a lot of people don't know, you know, you ask the child, why did you do that? It makes absolutely no sense what you just did, you know, and they don't understand that there is something else at work, you know, doing that. So, I can relate to you. You know, children are mischievous, but drawing a picture of the devil with crayons, that really means that something definitely was being placed in you, or the devil was fighting for your soul. Thank God, God won.
God won, and what a lot of people don't realize, Vincent, you know, when it comes to leading people to the truth, you know, God doesn't always choose the old white-headed preacher carrying around the Bible with glasses. Sometimes he chooses people like Moses. Now, Moses was a soldier. He killed people, and but God knew that he was strong enough, will-wise, to lead people.
Yeah, kind of like the movie The Apostle.
Yeah, exactly.
If you ever saw that.
One last thing I want to say on the people who are listening who figure that it's hard to believe that you've been taught something that isn't real is this right here. If I take my 4-year-old daughter right now And I go in there and I lock her in the bedroom till she's 20 years old. And I lock her in the bedroom with white walls. But I tell her, I come in her every day and I tell her that those walls are black. And she never comes out of that room until she's 20 years old. When she comes out of that room at 20 years old, even though those walls are white, you know what color she's going to believe that they are?
Yeah. She's been indoctrinated. Black.
She's been indoctrinated, and that's the way this educational system works. So it's really, really hard for people to go back and say, oh, no, I don't believe that. I was told this my whole life.
It is downright sinister. But you got to, that's the God's honest truth. That's exactly what the educational system is doing. As a matter of fact, I've been theorizing why the yellow school buses are orange, you know, and the school buses are not yellow. They are orange. I've often said that I ask people, what color is the school bus? They'll tell me yellow every time. But the school bus is orange.
Right.
And orange is the only color in the the colors that we have, which numbers actually come out to be 33 in the gematria.
33-degree Mason.
Yeah. 33. So orange, the school bus and the board that you wear on the top of your head is again, that comes from the Freemasons when it comes down to putting mortar onto, you know, the whatever you call it, trowel.
The trowel, yeah.
Yeah, and they put the mortar on there. That's the board. That's the board that goes on your head, and then they scoop off the concrete or the mortar, and then so what they do is they're actually building something. That's what the Masons do. They build. And so the board on top of your head means that you've been indoctrinated, fully indoctrinated. That's why you wear the square board. The people who indoctrinate you wear TAMs.
Exactly.
So they wear TAMs because they're the ones who did the indoctrination. But the board that's on your head is hey, that means that you've been totally, now you're under control. And that's what they want. They drove us around in orange school buses, got us to those schools, and then they indoctrinated us with all of this nonsense about the heliocentric model. So much so that even pastors and teachers, like the one video, somebody shared that with me. I can't think of the name. Oh yeah, the RC. Let me see, RCP channel or RPC. I'm sorry if you're listening. I should be calling your name out. Really, the project, right? And now National Consensus Project. That's right, National Consensus Project. I don't know where he got this name from. National Consensus, NCP, right? And that channel, on his channel, he shared with me that video, and I think everybody got the chance to go over to Facebook and look at it with the guy who was a pastor who's trying to tell everybody that the earth is round. And I don't know why he feels the need to put people back in the matrix. What's the purpose? If it doesn't matter, and if it's not an issue of salvation, why would a pastor try to get people to stop believing a more literal interpretation of the Bible? It makes no sense. It absolutely makes no sense.
Exactly.
But that's what they do because the school system and the whole, the entire indoctrination process has just been laid so well that, there's nothing, no one who's really got any sense out there. Well, and I'm not saying we got all the sense, but
the people who are laying the foundation are not dumb people. They're very smart people.
Yeah,
that's why it was called the Enlightenment era in
right.
1776 when Adam Weishaupt founded the Illuminati. That's why that was called the Enlightenment era, because these people were smart enough to know that they could come up with a system that would eventually control people in every civilization 200 and 300 years later.
Yeah.
These are not dumb people at all. These people didn't have TV and television. They didn't have television and radio stations and the internet to alter their mind back in these days. These people were smart. They knew what they were doing. All the way back to the time of the Egyptians.
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, listen, we got to have you back on. I got to get out of here. I said to you guys, I got to go. My son is over there at school tonight, and they're having homecoming, so I got to go and pick him up. But I wanted to say before, in the last 5 minutes, I wanted to address some of the questions that anybody might have had real fast. And within the last 5 minutes, we're going to do that. Let's take a look at it and see what the live stream is saying, because there's about 150, 60 people watching tonight. Okay. And I'm sure that there's more than that. Some people cut in and cut out. So overall, we might have had maybe 700 people on tonight. Okay. Let's see. Pilgrim in Progress. The appearance of the stars resemble the water movement doesn't simply mean that they are seeing a reflection. The sun and the moon are reflections, and the stars are described as lights. Okay, so all right, thank you. That was a comment. Thank you. And Rob Olar, you say hit Clinton. Okay, well, you're talking about Clinton. Let's see. John J. God bless the brothers and sisters in Jesus' holy name. All right. And Eileen Sharp, you saying good show, good night, and God bless. Okay, well, all right. Does anybody else have any comments or questions before we go? Because that's what we're gonna do. Thank you, Tamika, for showing up, and Rick Swain for showing up, Glenn Clark, and it's good to have all of you guys. Pilgrim Progress once again, and Return to God, and Sam Smith. Thank you. You said, but I feel the moon we see is a projection of an object. Yeah, well, right. I think that's what you were talking about, Terry, that the moon or just the heavenly bodies are reflections through the firmament of something else. You think?
Well, let me say this really, really quickly. If you guys are curious and you don't understand the stars and the moon, think about it like this. If you've ever had a little baby, they have this little toy that you can put on a baby's crib, and you turn it on and it shows stars and moon on the ceiling in your bedroom.
Uh-huh.
Now think about it like that. Inside that toy is a projection. It's a reflection. Okay, you have the original light, which would be the sun, and it's reflecting through those images built on the firmament around it, which in the toy would be the little plastic film around that light source. So therefore, when it turns, you see that projection on your ceiling, which would be your sky.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And yeah, so that's the simplest way that I can put it. If you want to understand the sky and why you see what you see, just go buy a little child's toy that goes on a crib, and you lay down in your bed with your child to get them to sleep, and you'll see stars spinning around on the ceiling of your bedroom. That's exactly the same way that the firmament, the sun, the moon, and the stars work in real life. They already knew this. That's how they come up with the idea of it. Just like a greenhouse, they already knew what God built. You go back and look at the guy who invented the greenhouse.
Mm-hmm.
He was a Freemason. He already knew what God had already built, which was the firmament. So,
wow, that's something. Well, okay. Colin Dresser, thank you for the super chat. We're going to get out of here, but our guest tonight was Terry Eicher. He has many interesting videos that he's putting up in the Flat Earth. You're putting them up on the Flat Earth channel on Facebook. I do have your personal profile up, but, again, Terry has a military background, also the National Guard, and also he was...
Coast Guard.
Coast Guard, I'm sorry. And then also he was in the military situation when he was, protecting the ice wall and brought into scrutiny for that. So, he has a lot of experience. So we're gonna call him back to pick his brain, a little bit later. But I just like to thank you, Terry, for coming on tonight. Again, you want to plug your YouTube channel too, so that people can know where you are? Terry?
Yes, you guys can find me on YouTube. I don't get on there a lot because a lot of my, YouTube's got this thing going, and they passed the law. I think they passed the bill about 6 or 7 months ago about it being called false information. So all the really, really, really good YouTube videos about, I say truthful videos, are shadow banned. And when I say shadow banned, you're going to have to look through about 200 videos before you actually find the truthful videos. And so I figured, my idea
unfortunately.
So my idea was, you know what? I know a lot of people that are on Facebook and who will look at things a whole lot faster before they get on YouTube. 'Cause a lot of people are skeptic, and they think that if you get on YouTube that you're going to find things on YouTube that are not true. But my theory to that is, hey, if McGregor and Nate Diaz fight tonight on UFC, guess what? You can get on YouTube tomorrow and watch the fight. Is that fake? Is that fake news? No, it's not. So, don't be skeptic about what you look up on YouTube. I just don't use YouTube a lot, but if you guys want to check out some of my videos, they are on YouTube. But my main audience and my main believers and followers are on Facebook, and that's what I will continue to do. Unless I call him Circle Jerk, but Mark Zuckerberg does something else to alter that. So.
Yeah, there's something, isn't it? Well, okay. Well, thank you very much, Terry. I got to get out of here. Guys, God bless you guys. It's been wonderful having you tonight. We'll try to get Ron Hagberg. I'm going to get him on the line so we can talk to him about some of the projects that he's got going on. And we're going to have Terry back again. God bless you, Terry. And God bless those kids of yours. They're in bed right now, so I know you got to get back to being father. As I do too. Well, anyway, you guys have a good night, and remember until next time that Jesus is the light of the world, and the truth shall set you free.
God bless.
God bless.